Madlab Performance presents The Lab Podcast. Here's your host and chief mad scientist, Dan Gilbert.
Hello and welcome everyone to The Lab. I am Dan Gilbert, your host for today's conversation. Today I will be talking to two great personal friends of mine, Luke Hillman and Mahendra Khera. Luke's a top-notch trainer who we are lucky enough to have working with us at Madlab, and Hendy is an amazing video producer that we are also very lucky to have with us at Madlab. How you guys doing?
Great, man.
Doing awesome. It's a pleasure to be on.
Today's topic, a little bit of a controversial one, as we like to talk about, CrossFit.
What's that?
CrossFit. It's a good question, Luke. So we're going to talk about some of the things that we like about CrossFit, some of the myths that kind of surround it, some of the there's some issues that we may have with it as well. Is that fair to say, Luke?
Yeah, probably some issues.
Probably some
issues and some things that are good about it too, you could say.
Yeah.
So CrossFit, honestly, when I first started training, CrossFit's an interesting topic to me because I've seen it through a lot of different things. So when I first started training, I spent about a year as kind of a really crappy trainer. And CrossFit kind of opened my eyes to a different way of training. So, love it or hate it, it is different. And what it helped me do, because I didn't start training CrossFit, I just took it and then started to research other modalities because of it. And I liked its basis. I liked that it was trying to cover strength movements. And then all of a sudden, so you might do at the time, I remember when they were doing the workout of the day stuff, that you could do 5x5 military press. And then that might be your workout. And then you go into the next day, then you go into more conditioning and movement base where you're doing muscle ups and then you're running some as well. And then you're doing burpees and all sorts of other stuff, so you cover a lot of conditioning and some movement, and then you might have a day off, and then you're back into something different where you're looking at a skill like power cleaning or something like that. So I liked that aspect of it, and I thought that when things were done really well with CrossFit, they kind of moved those different modalities around and gave you enough, so you got enough rest and you focused on strength and you're focusing on power and you're focusing on mobility and gymnastic training and then obviously conditioning. So it really helped me become a better trainer. With that being said, I also see some issues with it as well, especially as it is today. Luke, what are some of your thoughts on CrossFit as it stands today and your personal experience with it?
Well, to what you were saying about the movements, strength, you mentioned the clean, stuff like that. They're not bad movements. It's not like these exercises are bad. It's just they're not treated as complicated movements in which they are, if that makes sense.
Yeah, power clean is super complicated. There are 64 cues to a power clean.
And think how tough it is for, I would say, you, me, people in our company, pretty in good shape, and it's still a challenge to do moves like that.
Yeah, we can all run 3 miles, right?
Yeah. Not me. So I feel like the technicality is left out of it. I feel like they use strength movements, but when you do them so much, you're not actually building strength.
I can see what you're saying.
You go into more of a metabolic workout.
So your issue is that you see sometimes some strength movements, like they'll take maybe like a deadlift or a squat, and they say that it's I
just don't believe beginner lifters should not do CrossFit.
If there was a hierarchy of exercises and movements,
because you need to work on your body. Sorry.
No, you're good.
Yeah.
The bulk of the movements you do in CrossFit are at the top. You have to build that base first for all the other movements that go into it.
I see what you're saying with that. By the way, the 3 mile comment as a inside inside Madlab joke we may get into later. Who knows? It's a
It'll probably come back up.
Conditioning test coming up, I'm sure, in the future.
It's not worth
Well, let's say this. Hendy, what do you feel like CrossFit does well?
I love the community aspect of CrossFit. Something you don't think about, but it helps with when it comes to retention, because retention is a big part of going to the gym. Or accountability.
Can you be consistent?
Yeah, can you consistently come to the gym? There's a lot of accountability that helps with you too. I had a friend who did CrossFit, and they had these like, I don't know, if like a 30-day challenge or some other thing that you encourage you to keep you coming into the gym. That part of it, you work out with a group. Everyone's high-fiving each other. It's a good time. That's what I see. I think that's the big appeal, and that gets people to go to CrossFit for that reason, because that sense of community. So that part of it I love.
Yeah, I think that is something that CrossFit does really, really well. And I think that other aspects of fitness should kind of look at CrossFit for that. I would also say kind of something that they may be better at than almost anything in fitness that I can remember since Arthur Jones came up with like the Nautilus machines that he somehow got put in every single gym across America.
The Nautilus.
And overseas as well. Is there marketing? CrossFit's marketing is I mean that's
You have
their
big
A-game.
brands just pretty much dedicated.
And you have
the CrossFit
the
brand.
CrossFit.
Yeah.
Is it the CrossFit Games? Is that what it's called? That big competition they have every year.
I mean, think about how many people watch that.
Yeah.
Well,
They
that's
have
another thing.
sponsors.
That would be the best thing about CrossFit, in my opinion, is the competition. Even you're there with a group of people, and at the end of the day, you're trying to compete with them. And so, naturally, if you're competing with somebody, you're going to put a little more effort in.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. What would you say? And I'll give this one to you, Luke Hillman. What's your biggest number one issue with CrossFit?
People get hurt all the time.
Injuries.
So a lot of injuries from, like we mentioned a little earlier, of you're doing these complicated movements that aren't meant to be done 30 times.
Like the power clean.
Like the power clean.
Right.
Or, I mean, even a deadlift.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good.
So you're saying like the sheer volume.
Yeah, the sheer volume. I mean, naturally, especially you're putting yourself through that, your body is going to, you're not going to be lifting with proper form. So
Yeah, it's hard
you're
to
gonna go
maintain
into
a power
extension.
clean.
Something's going to happen, and then as you keep going and going and going, then you put yourself into a very vulnerable place.
I did a CrossFit workout at one point, and we did
And how many people in CrossFit have to
60 some power cleans. We did hang cleans.
Yeah.
We did power cleans from the floor, and we did squat cleans. So it ended up being like 60 cleans. And I feel like I have a pretty good power clean, but towards the end, I will kind of agree with you there. I was just like,
Yeah, so think of it this way.
Good.
Imagine it's one thing if you're in peak physical performance, you're like an athlete.
You're about to make my point here.
How many people are general, like, just like your average person who's going to a CrossFit gym and then performing these movements? Like if you work a desk job, what are some things that you're going to naturally already have issues with sitting all day?
I will to play a little bit of devil's advocate here, Luke's favorite position in life.
Absolutely.
I would say that CrossFit's model is not necessarily geared towards. I do agree with you with the volume and some of the complicated lifts, but as far as general population and getting hurt, I think it comes from poor form in a movement that they're not used to, done repeatedly. Like that'll cause any overuse injury, right?
That's what we're making. Yeah.
Right. But then I would say that I think the CrossFit model is meant to have progressions to lead people up to this. And going back to what I said earlier with the marketing, I think this is possible. So I don't know exactly when some of this stuff happened, or if this is just like I think what causes a lot of the issues is the booming growth of CrossFit, and then the sheer amount of new coaches that have come into it.
Phone coaches?
What's that?
Phony coaches.
I mean,
Air quotes coaches.
They're new, and I don't think because of the boom and the growth. I think when you give somebody a weekend certification, I mean, I took probably 4 months for my certification, because I was busy doing a lot of other stuff and everything, but I didn't know anything when I started training, and it took me a long time to get to where I pretty much am now. And I think with all these new coaches, I think some of them can give CrossFit a worse name as from the injury front than it maybe deserves, right? I think that maybe the people that came up with, when they came up with CrossFit, they had some progressions, they had some ways that you would change up the movements. Like when I was reading into it, it really was like you didn't do heavy conditioning 7 days a week, right?
Yeah.
And now I think that a lot of the gyms kind of move towards that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's where you're starting to see a lot of your injuries. What would you think about that, Lou?
Well, also too, okay, like so what you're saying is poor programming.
Yeah, I think it's
poor personal programming.
I think that it's new coaches that aren't educated and they're just not programming well and kind of giving off the idea that this is CrossFit. Where I think there are some boxes that I've seen, they call the gyms boxes. Everything's got to have a name, got to be different, right? So there are some boxes that I've seen where they are run by higher level coaches, and the programming from day to day is more in line with stuff that I would personally agree with. And then I see, but at the majority of the boxes I see do kind of follow the model that you're worried about, Luke.
Well, and so my thing is like it's not like there's a lot of great athletes who do CrossFit. So I think you should be clear about that. It's not like
what do you mean by it? What do you mean?
Great athletes. A lot of people like the people who do CrossFit and who are well renowned for CrossFit and everything. They're in great shape.
Okay.
These people are in great shape, and most of them actually can do the movements very well. And so my thing is with that, a lot of people, I mean, I don't have the numbers on this, but people I've run into and everything that are successful with CrossFit have worked on their bodies prior to doing CrossFit. So they've worked on their deadlifts, they've worked on their hinge, their squat, their overhead. So they have a good mind-muscle connection, and they also are more body aware, and they also have a better baseline of strength going into this than just say your average person. I know you can say it's not built for your average person, but it's definitely marketed to your average person.
It is marketed to your average person.
So at the end of the day, that's who you're going for. So you're trying to pull them in. So you have to cater to that.
That's one of my issues too.
Yeah. So you have to, I mean, and all of us as trainers, how many times do we have to, we'll make a stride. Like I lifted this looked great. You know, I did whatever number, but then how it comes the next week, it looks like shit. Right?
Yeah.
That happens to the best of us.
Yeah, true.
Right? So, I mean,
we all have off days.
Yeah. And so you have to program that in. If you're not programming like mobility time or anything like that, your body just breaks down.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what we're seeing. And
I mean,
how many
people have to go to physical therapy because
the amount of injuries are kind of astounding. I feel like I read somewhere that it was like 75% of the people that reported doing CrossFit have reported having an injury.
Yeah.
And the most likely injuries, you're going to see a lot of shoulders, you're going to see a lot of lower backs, and you're going to see a lot of knees.
Yeah.
Right? You get a lot of the knee stuff from poor form and also lack of mobility. You know, how many people come in front of you that you see have an issue with ankle mobility?
Well,
right?
Yeah.
And then they're trying to squat, and they're trying to squat in volume with a lot of resistance. And then you start to do some more complicated things, like you're squatting, and then all of a sudden you're jumping, and then you're down on the floor doing burpees. I mean, it kind of is a recipe for injury.
You all have known me for a good bit. Even 4 years ago, would you want me power cleaning?
No. 4 years ago, I wouldn't have probably even had you deadlifting.
Yeah, I'd probably be in really bad shape.
Yeah, Luke had a little bit of a just backstory. Luke had some hip mobility issues that led to some lower back problems.
And at this point, I was still in pretty good shape. Like, it's not like I was very out of shape. Was playing basketball a lot. But
that lower, I remember this. Your lower back was in such a state where it was tough even. Remember stretching out before basketball?
I was like an old man. I literally was like an old man.
You told me at one point that you just don't do deadlifts.
Yeah. Because
so you had pretty much written off the deadlift.
Yeah.
And now...
completely. And now I can't stop it.
Now it's a staple.
Yeah. And I have no back pain because it's conducted right. You know what I mean? You have to... But before I even went to that weight, I started my hinge from the ground up.
True.
And I did the same thing with my squat. And every single person has to do that no matter what athlete you are. You even watch these guys who train like top tier athletes. They're not doing a billion reps on the cleans, are they?
No.
No, they're not. They're doing controlled work. Even the explosive stuff is still controlled. It's not ridiculous loads, and it's not for a ridiculous amount of repetitions.
Because it's power for power's sake.
Yeah, exactly.
Or strength for strength's sake.
So you want maximum, just to get the maximum out of each rep. So let's say you do like a power, like you said, power movement, you do like 5 times, 5 reps.
Yeah, I do kind of think though. I mean, I don't. When you look at the games,
the games. So you're talking about the top tier guys.
Yeah,
those are the guys I'm pretty much mentioning who did not start from the ground. Like,
but the competitions. I mean, even if you're taking the competition, you were like, all right, let's look at how the competition. I know it's extreme because you're trying to find out who is the best or whatever, but it is kind of programmed in a way that makes you do a ton of volume.
Yeah. So, and that's fine because then you're competing. So,
it's like any athlete. We have to know what the risks are versus the reward, right? So, if I play football, while somebody can be like, "Oh, it's good, you're active," I need to know the dangers of when I go to hit somebody or when I get hit. I know my risk.
What you were saying, you go play football, right?
Right.
You have like 1 game a week, right?
But you should know your risk. I agree.
And
I think the same for CrossFit. CrossFit athletes know their risk.
Yeah.
They know that they could possibly get injured because of all the volume they do, but they do it to compete in CrossFit. And I agree with that.
Yeah, yeah.
But when you have those CrossFit competitions and you have people that are just trying to get into general shape, I feel like they need to know the risks. And I feel like some of them don't.
Well, I mean, can some of the coaches even explain the risks? Do some of the coaches even know the risks?
I think that's like anything, though, right?
Yeah, it comes down to the individual.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest things is just, again, I take it back to the sudden growth of CrossFit.
The origin of CrossFit is not bad. The idea of it is not bad.
So real quick, what would be an interesting, something we can maybe look up later is what a CrossFit program would look like when it first came out versus how it is in a lot of CrossFit gyms these days, to see if there's any change. Because I remember you mentioned that it comes down sometimes to the programming and the new coaches, the boom of new coaches coming in. So that'd be an interesting look to see.
I have seen some, like I have seen some specific boxes where I know the owners and they do the majority of the programming. Or at least lead the programming, and they're smart guys and girls that I think know what they're doing, and they use they do their programming in the right way and have a good mindset with it. There's still some things like you're never gonna agree with everything. What were you saying?
Well, just to say, like, all right. So your point, if you're doing CrossFit to compete in CrossFit, then that's cool. We get that.
Right.
But if it's to stay in shape and for general fitness, that's not for you, because there's no longevity in CrossFit.
Yeah, I think that's an issue for sure. I mean, you have physical therapy places that are literally coming up, and multiple physical therapy places that put themselves next to or inside of CrossFit because people get hurt because of what we just talked about.
If longtime client, Mike Hamilton. Shout out to Mike.
Hey, Mike.
He's here with us.
He is here with us.
How old are you, Mike? 60? Mike's 60 years old.
Doesn't look it, though.
Doesn't look it. Is in great shape and pulls a ton of weight. Is in a great spot for his age. And still works out hard at 60. And So my point is there's longevity. I don't think Mike could do CrossFit right now. Does that make sense? So for his general fitness, I don't know if I would have him do, 30 cleans. I don't know if that'd be a good idea. I mean, you tell me.
I don't really think anybody in this room would.
Yeah, no.
And again, I clean well, but I even noticed like when we started getting up in reps, I did that workout.
But does that make sense, the
2 hours.
longevity argument, though?
Yeah, no,
That's more, I guess, what I have an issue with is just the longevity.
Okay,
Your general pop.
What about this? So,
and the reason why I say general pop, because let's be real, everyone wants to cater to athletes. Everyone wants to cater to the top tier. Most of the people that listen to you, follow you, are not the top tier.
True.
Okay? They're general population.
Yes.
So, and we talk about marketing and everything. If your business needs to survive, it's not by top tier athletes. It's
but I would say the most important thing in fitness, if you really just kind of put one thing just to stand out, could we all agree would be consistency?
Oh, 100%.
Yes.
And that's what Hendy touched on.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think
It's phenomenal for that.
But that's what I'm saying. So then it's almost like, yes, there are these issues, but like the draw of the games and the athletes and all the competitions, and the competitions breed the community and like how hard they have to work each day. Like there's something when you get done a ridiculous workout, regardless of programming or anything, and you're next to somebody who is exhausted just like you feel like you've bonded with that individual, and that keeps you coming back. So I feel like there's an argument to be made for maybe this is not always the greatest thing long term for our bodies, or it's not the greatest thing, the greatest program workout, but if it's going to get you to come to the gym and be consistent, then there's a lot to be said for that.
But
that is a
I
phenomenal
agree
point.
with that. Yeah, if it gets you in the gym, that's correct.
Tough argument.
But to play devil's advocate, if you're performing that at such a high volume, how long will you last in the gym before you get?
You can want to go,
yeah,
but it doesn't mean you can go.
And I think that's an excellent point, because if I go
back to the back stuff, there's a lot of times I wanted to go to the gym, I could not go.
Right.
So I mean,
yeah, pain and injury and all of those things are limiting factors. And I think one of the worst things that can happen is, let's say I've never been in the gym in my life, right? Hendy does CrossFit. He doesn't, but if he was doing CrossFit, and he convinces me to go, and I go, and I love it. I love the workout, love the community. I get super excited, and then after a week, I damage something in my shoulder, and I'm told I need shoulder surgery. I feel like that would be just a huge. I mean, that could stop me from ever, not because of the injury, but even when I come back from the injury, I might be like, well, I'm not working out. This isn't meant to be. I should just not work out. Like I might think like
how
that.
Many
and
times
I think that
do we
happens.
get that when we're in front of people for the first time?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, I have heard that story.
I think we see people that just don't think they can do simplistic things, and we turn out and they can do amazing things. I.e., Mike.
Mike's a true monster.
Yeah.
God among men, I'd say. I'd say. Not just in good shape for 60, but just in good shape in general. I did one of Mike's workouts a couple weeks ago. I jumped in, figured that I just didn't feel like programming for myself. So Logan was training Mike. I jumped into the workout, and then I immediately hated it. And I was like, holy God, like Mike can do an awful lot of stuff. I'm exhausted.
Logan just probably wanted to kill him.
Bro, that's probably
Logan.
It's probably upset with
Logan's
you.
a trainer with us. Great trainer. Shout out, Logan.
Look at that. Look at that.
He's getting everyone in.
Look at
everyone.
Logan have. You guys are very competitive with each other. So
yeah,
I always like to hear when
it's good for the young
I
buck.
hear some positive. Not to constantly bring up issues, because I feel like we've talked a lot about CrossFit. But I will say another issue that I have. Have you guys come across a CrossFit box reaching out to train teams? So you see teams training in CrossFit, because we talked.
I have a great story on this.
Oh, let's hear.
So, and the only reason we say teams is because it kind of relates to this. We were actually playing in a league, and one of the guys we played against, I just knew him from playing ball years ago, and he played some overseas a little bit. You know what I mean? And he talked to me. You know, just saw me, recognized me, or whatever. And he talked to me. He's like, "Dude, I'm in bad shape trying to come back. I tore my ACL doing CrossFit." And when, as an athlete, he wants to play ball. That's the main goal.
So what led him to CrossFit? Do you have any idea?
I have no idea. It was a short conversation.
Right.
I mean, obviously, I think what led him to CrossFit is probably everything we've talked about. The community. You know, they are good movements. These aren't bad movements.
The draw of the athletes.
Draw of the athletes. Yeah. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, like and when we're talking about sports like basketball, football, baseball, yada yada, those athletes just should not do CrossFit. And I will stand pretty hard on that. If the goal is to have them have a good athletic career in that sport, if that's the goal, then that CrossFit isn't your answer. If you're playing sports just for whatever, then CrossFit is okay. If my goal as a trainer is to get a kid in shape to play Division I basketball or whatever division it is, I will not do any CrossFit type programming.
Because
one, at the end of the day, what's the biggest thing for an athlete? What's the best skill an athlete has?
Staying healthy.
Yep, availability.
best ability is availability.
You can be the best player, but if you're injured all the time, you're not on the floor, it doesn't matter.
I'm a Detroit Lions fan, so I understand. We got like 20-some players injured right now.
And so
on a third-string quarterback.
and
Fans are starting to play. I think they called me the other day.
Like, we got a spot on the team.
So yeah, so go into what you were saying, but like I definitely wanted to bring that up because I just remember, honestly, that kind of personally like kind of sucked because for someone who loves playing ball too and had the opportunity that he had to hurt myself doing something that really could 100% been avoided sucks.
Tearing your ACL in a workout is also
That just shouldn't happen.
right, unless you were like doing field drills or something.
And that's
that
the
would
point,
probably
like-
be non-contact. And you'd probably have an issue beforehand anyway, whether
Yeah.
it's like a femur rotation issue or it's ankle mobility or whatever it is. I feel like that's something that should be looked at. Otherwise, like I don't know why. I would be beside myself if one of our athletes
I'd be devastated.
And
their
something
ACL.
you
I'd be
don't necessarily
devastated.
think about either. You know, you're just
Yeah.
you're doing a workout.
Yeah.
It's kind of the last thing you think about is tearing an ACL.
Yeah, for sure. I think that another thing to look at as far as the sports argument, I think the best thing that you can do in a sport, besides once you're general, you go through your general physical preparedness, and you got your basic movements down, is you need to replicate what the sport does,
Exactly.
right? And so
Yes.
there's a theory of specificity
Yes.
that does not get covered in CrossFit. So I do have an issue with that.
No program specificity.
Specificity. Specificity.
I can't- it is one
I
of the
will
words
not
I
even
can't
try to say that. 'cause
Yeah,
I
it's
will
one of the
butcher
words I
that.
can't say. I'm not here for grammar.
I think I said it really well the first time, but now listen.
Now you're
to
thinking.
you,
Now you're thinking about it,
Just
so
do
you
that.
can't
Yeah,
specificity.
I can't speak.
That's it.
fact check.
Specificity.
That's correct.
There we go.
All right.
Thank you, Mike.
So this just in, Mike can spell.
And I can speak.
Yeah, I know.
That's impressive. I feel. But that's another one of my big issues with it is I do see that happen. I do see that happen an awful lot. And that again, it could also be there's also instances to play the other side again, where a team could be doing nothing, and somebody reaches out and volunteers their time, and CrossFit is what they know, so they try to help.
All right, but how much of that is really what we're talking about here?
I don't have any
agree with
numbers
you,
to
and
know
like in
either
that
way.
scenario, I totally agree with you. Obviously, like I'm not an all in or none person in the sense of like
We are with a lot of things.
No betas. No betas.
there's definitely
Let's kick
like
this
there's
mic
like
off.
there is gray area,
Lord.
and so I mean, and like you can always find a scenario, but I guess we're talking about the larger picture, is what I feel like we're trying to paint here. And in the larger
Right.
picture, it's not just people be like, oh hey, I want to come to your game, and the person I just mentioned wouldn't even is, in their 20s, so they ain't just volunteering to go to those games.
Right.
You know what I mean? So.
No, that makes sense to me. You have any other thoughts on on CrossFit, Hendy? I
So-
know you're over there.
No, so I have an interesting question I want to propose to both of you. So we agree that the community aspect of CrossFit is amazing. The marketing for CrossFit, amazing. The
Yeah,
games,
definitely,
all that's
definitely.
really cool. So what could you do to then improve the rest of it to make it an overall great product or experience for general population or anyone else who would want to participate?
Obviously, there needs to be levels, like beginner, whatever, intermediate, expert, in the sense of you have to work on your body. You still have to work on your body. So you have to do, no matter what kind of athlete you are, you have to do consistent mobility and corrective work.
So, like, what would a level look like?
Dan would probably be better off for this. Dan has a lot of thoughts on this. I know that.
Yeah, I do have a lot of thoughts
I
on
cut
this.
them off,
So
I'm good
I
at
think that I think a revamping of the education structure would be really good, and then education structure as in progressions and regressions and movement work. I think that when somebody comes into the box, I think that proper assessments need to be done to see how that person can move and where they're going to fit into that gym, right? And then I think that there needs to be more concentration on the management of volume. If we're going to work out, so if we're all going to work out at a CrossFit box, and let's say like the goal of the place is we want to be able to replicate in some way some of these workouts that the CrossFit athletes do, and like maybe we'll gear it back a little bit or whatever we got to do, and like they do have levels for that. So they do have levels for their competitions, and they have competitions that go across the country. But I think even then, if we're gonna work to all be good at those competitions and compete as a box, whether it just be with each other within our own gym or as with other places in the community or whatever, I think that the volume does have to be managed in a smarter way.
So would that look like bringing in additional coaches?
There's
Would that be-
other
'cause-
things you have to do still, like if you want to compete. So what my point is, like with the competition, you're competing at CrossFit. So, all right, let's take a boxer. If a boxer is training for a fight, his competition, is he only hitting the bag?
No.
Okay, what other stuff are you doing? A lot of weight training, explosive training?
Yeah, he does. Yeah, he's got to work on power. He's got to work on strength. Got to work on movement.
Yep.
For
From
sure.
what I know-
yeah.
So you're
from,
saying he's doing. So wait, what you're saying is he's doing other things outside of just. It's just like for same with basketball. To get better at basketball and really get better at your sport, it's not just going outside and shooting on your hoop.
Right. That helps.
Does
That might help the
helps.
most.
But you got to do things like you need to get that strength training in. And
Yeah,
need
you
get
got to
that
do
corrected
things
in.
to protect your body and also to take it to the next level. If you can add 4 inches or 6 inches to your vertical jump, or you can be able to stay on the court longer because your conditioning level is higher, or you've worked on some movement stuff so your knees don't bother you in the third quarter or whatever.
So my point is, like outside the competition, you do other things besides just the things you would do in the competition. Does that make sense? So
I
like,
see where you're going with
So
this.
do you see
Yes.
where I'm going
Yes,
with this?
yeah,
So
yeah.
like, you know, for instance, to what I was trying to say earlier with the football thing was you play football, right? You practice during the week. You have a day off, usually, right? About one
Right.
day off in the week, and I say you play Fridays, right? If it's high school or whatever. So you have, are your practices really as hard as your games?
No.
I know they say,
Sometimes-
let's be real, they say you should practice harder, but let's just be real, what's out there, even at the professional level, the practice.
I've had some horrible practices.
Yeah,
man.
the practices are not even.
I played rugby, and our practices in college were worse than the games a lot of times.
Yeah.
Our practices were
I mean,
heinous.
you see some NFL practices just walking around going through the movements, man.
That's true.
Yeah.
But I think that I have a good argument there. Not like I think that in season you have to really watch what you do if you're gonna, because you know that your volume is going to be high with whatever you're doing. So I think that is like one of
If
the
you're a
issues.
trainer, I would say the hardest thing you have to do for an athlete, if you're training them during the season, is programming around their
Schedule.
games, their schedule,
Yeah.
Exactly.
keeping them healthy, watching regressions, and also not pushing them too hard while they're with you.
Right, because at the end of the day,
Yeah.
you want them to be able to compete on the field.
Exactly.
So, and this would be, I guess it really depends on what the person's goal is in front of you. But even then, like I still think, yeah, I agree with what you're saying. I think that a revamp in education, so like where you're, all right, here's some of the stuff that we're going to concentrate on. Here's some of the stuff that we're going to learn. We're going to learn assessments. We're going to learn some movement, how to get better at certain movements. We're going to learn what people need to be good at before they really start getting to the next level in CrossFit. Like, you can't just walk in and start power cleaning.
No.
Right? If you can't deadlift, you have no business power cleaning. That bar should not be coming up there, right?
Just think when you go to the gym, we've actually all worked out together recently and go to the gym. How many movements do you see butchered?
Yeah, well,
and horrifically.
Well, that's another point.
Complicated movements.
So we are saying all of this stuff about CrossFit, and I don't want to just dump on CrossFit.
No.
I think that maybe the problem is not. This is a little bit of an epiphany. So the problem is not. It's just fitness culture, right?
Fitness culture.
Yeah. So I think maybe that's the bigger issue at hand. I think CrossFit maybe because it's so big, gets looked at all the time as the giant issue, but.
It's true.
You could walk in any gym and watch movements be destroyed.
Yeah.
No matter what kind of gym it is. You can walk in, you can walk into like a big, big commercial gym, or you can walk into something, smaller, like a cheap Planet Fitness where they're just using machine stuff, and you still see things.
I'm going to play my favorite role, devil advocate here.
Yes.
I'm going to say that
the only role for him.
Those people you're seeing aren't working with a professional.
We're going to dive
Luke
into.
brings it back to his business.
No, I'm just saying. So what I'm saying is, it's like when we're spotting those people in the gym. Like,
so what you're saying is you're just on this
professional.
podcast to get clients.
No, I was talking about like
not at all. So my name's Luke Hillman, by the way.
Like,
you can contact me.
A CrossFit coach is a professional.
Yes.
So they're coaching them.
Yes.
Right? That average person you're watching at the gym is being coached by nobody.
That is a very good point.
So obviously the expectation for somebody being coached is higher than someone just over there pulling out their Instagram account.
I agree with that.
No, that's 100% true. So that does kind of.
I mean, it goes back to what you're saying
right
about.
In the chest.
No. Well, no. It just goes back to what you're saying about education, though.
I didn't think about that. Yeah, no, you're right. No, you're right.
But like I said,
because all those classes are led by professionals.
That's what I mean.
I just think that
not just trying to hustle on here.
I always appreciate the hustle, Luke.
All right.
I always appreciate it. I think part of me too gets a little bit upset by this topic because I want
CrossFit can be amazing.
I agree.
Between the community, and I love business, so the marketing is amazing. And if you walk into one of the boxes, I mean, some of the setups are out of control. They're out of this world.
Nice.
Like I said, I know a lot of CrossFit people who
it's like
are
everything
great
that you
athletes,
want, and it's simple, and it's spacious, and it's just great. And then I just don't. I like efficiency, and I like effectiveness, and I like to see things run at the optimal level. And I just think that a lot of CrossFit misses the mark.
So let's get back to that then. So you said maybe having a greater trainer presence on the floor is a way to improve?
I don't know if it's I don't think it's a manpower thing.
Yeah,
Would you agree with that, Luke? I think it's a quality
I will
of
say
the
this.
coach.
I do agree with that, but in a way it is similar to group fitness, correct?
Yeah, it is.
So
I know what you're
with-
saying. Yeah.
So naturally with group fitness, you do have that because you're watching so many people, things are going to slip by. It's hard to keep an eye on everyone and make sure everyone, and if one person's doing something incorrectly, what do? You make sure you try to help them out, but what's everyone else doing? So it could be how many people are usually in the box?
So you're saying that maybe some of the stats with some of the injury statistics that are out there could be inflated by the fact that it is because the movements they do. Let's talk about some of the movements real quick. The movements by themselves are pretty good movements that you'd pretty much. It'd be awesome to have everybody.
Oh
yeah, if you
Like, you would want somebody to be able to power clean.
able to do that.
100%.
Yeah, they're in a great.
And they squat
100%.
and they deadlift.
Yes.
Absolutely.
You know, they run, they get on the rowers, they do all of that stuff. Some of the stuff they do, like the muscle up, super complicated movement.
Yeah.
But a good one, you know?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of really good things to like there. It's just how they're programmed and put together, and then the sheer volume. But let's say programming is top notch. You have a good CrossFit class of like 30 or 40 people, and you're one coach.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would because now
It's just impossible. It's
Because if
impossible.
everybody power cleans well, then you still could have somebody. But I still don't think
If
it
you
would
can
be
get
at the
40
level.
people lined up that power clean well, come talk to me.
Yeah, you are a
You are a
Come work for us.
Yeah, no shit.
like I mean,
Challenge accepted.
Yeah, I mean,
Because I've taught like a boxing class of like 12 once, and even then that's a handful.
yeah.
But boxing is super complicated.
Well, exactly.
Yeah. True.
And some of the movements with CrossFit can be very complicated as well.
But even then, I don't think that I would still concentrate on the quality of the coaching and the programming. That's what I would focus on, because if I did have 40 people power cleaning, it would be because I trust 40 people to power clean.
Well, and so,
I agree
to
with
your
that.
point, it makes great sense, because better coaching influences better culture. So within that culture, you're assuming that with that coach, is spreading that knowledge, you're basically going to indoctrinate in the culture.
But you were also saying
better.
too the structure as well, like having like levels.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I
so
think
then
that
I don't
would-
have somebody doing 40
Yeah.
power clean. You know, like I just, and then also to bring to another point, it's great community, right? Mm-hmm. There is no way that if I'm the only coach in that room and I have 10 people that have done it for 6 months, a year, 3 years, 10 years, or whatever, that they're not helping other people.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
Yeah.
And honestly too, like the whole idea of like maybe like leveling up or something like that, different tiers, I think that would be an even better piece marketing wise, because think of like other things like karate, for example.
Well, that could be on the way, Hendy.
Indeed.
Yes. Careful going too far with that one. But yes, I do see your point. I think having more distinct levels, because they do have, in the competitions, they do have tiers in the competitions, but I don't think a lot of times the workouts.
Yeah, does that have to do more with the
that-
volume
you're right.
or something versus like this like level versus
I think that almost every movement needs to have progressions, regressions, and
Should.
you usually get it with a couple movements in the workout. Because I've done CrossFit a good amount. I've done it at different boxes. I've done it at charity events. I've done it with people just they love CrossFit, and I jumped into a workout with them, and we've done it that way. So I've done it a really good amount. So I forgot what my point was with this.
it happens.
Brain just went completely down there.
It's all good. Happens to the best of us.
But I think that again, I would kind of bring it back to. I think that if it did have higher quality coaching, that was my point, is that every single movement would have the progression and regression, and not just two things that you notice that people might struggle with and that you're worried about, and you're just changing that. And even then, that's not all the time. And I think if everything did have the progression and regression and people had to go through something somewhat formal to figure out where they are, I think that would be a lot more efficient.
Yeah.
I agree.
Definitely.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
We just fixed CrossFit.
We just fixed it.
I don't know.
So what are their main points?
Main points would be, we're not trying to demonize CrossFit as a whole.
Keep the community.
If it gets
keep the
and it's getting
community.
people
Keep the
in
box.
the gym.
Yeah, keep the box.
The way it's structured,
It's
the
just-
equipment, the
Yeah.
simplicity.
Yeah, all that stuff's great. The movements are great. They're not bad movements. No one's saying that. No one
Movements,
here is saying
for the
that.
most part,
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
great.
But at the end of the day, there's still other things that need to be done. And I personally, from an athletic standpoint, from training an athlete, I would not do CrossFit programming for an athlete. And for right now,
I think that should be across the board, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's like,
Yeah.
if we're trying to do if you're trying to do high level training, you need to work on, your general movements. So maybe like if you had a really well programmed CrossFit and they worked on some general movements, but past that, once you're good at those movements, now you need to start getting into what do you do in this? What are some athletic movements? What do you do in your sport? And then once you get even more advanced, what do you do in your position in the sport?
Exactly.
Right? And you need to start to repeat some of those movements and just get better and better and better besides, like, outside of practice, right?
I agree.
I think that is a big thing. So CrossFit, we don't hate you.
no.
We just think
Have certain
that you have a
feelings.
place, and we think that there are some improvements that can be made. I would definitely say. Is that fair?
That's definitely
I
fair.
agree.
Fair?
Absolutely.
Yeah, just trying to improve the quality of everything, right? Just
Yeah.
have a
100%.
good discussion on it.
Yeah, great discussion.
Gentlemen, thank you for coming on.
Absolutely.
Oh, of course.
Love talking to you guys.
Absolutely. I guess.
It's always a pleasure.
Everyone listening, thank you very much. Thank you for coming to Lab.